Anti-terror police have charged a 25-year-old man with terrorism-related offences. The Sri Lankan man was arrested yesterday at Kensington in Sydney's southeast. New South Wales and Australian Federal Police will hold a media briefing on that soon. We're expecting that in the next few minutes, and we'll bring you that live just as soon as that begins. Pressure is building on Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton to explain some of his decisions made in the portfolio. The ABC understands that he used his ministerial power to allow a second au pair, this time an Italian woman, to stay in the country despite warnings from his department that she posed a high risk of breaching her visa conditions. Political reporter Qd Police has more from Parliament House in Canberra.
Earlier in the week you would have heard about the French au pair who was allowed in or given a visa by Peter Dutton, and the news today that there was an Italian woman in 2015 who was given some help from the Home Affairs Minister. So her name is Michaela Marchiso. She was planning to work for a former Queensland Police colleague of the Home Affairs Minister. She was detained at the Brisbane airport in June 2015, Joe, because Border Force officials believe she was planning to work as a babysitter here in Australia. That would have been in breach of her tourist visa. But despite some warnings from his department that granting a visitor visa to this woman would be of high risk, in the middle of June of that same year, Peter Dutton overruled those officials and he did grant the au pair a 3-month tourist visa. Now, he says at the time that that was in the interests of Australia as a humane and generous society. But as you say, this is emerging now just a few days after Mr Dutton, or after we learned that Mr Dutton had freed a French au pair from detention after lobbying from AFL boss Gillan McLachlan. So certainly a lot of attention here, Joe, on Peter Dutton's role in intervening in these cases. Now back to the Italian woman that we've learned of today. We understand she was planning to work for a man, as I said, who worked with Mr Dutton before he entered Parliament. They were in the Queensland Police Service together. Now, it's unclear whether that former colleague lobbied Peter Dutton directly or whether the minister was even aware of the family's connection to the au pair. And we should say as well, Joe, that the ABC is not suggesting that the Italian woman, breached her visa conditions while in Australia. We've got a statement here from Peter Dutton on this latest case. Let's take a look at that now. The Minister Dutton considers cases solely on their merits, the statement says. Any suggestions cases are determined on any other basis, including whether he knew the individual who referred the matter, is completely false. And there are long-standing intervention powers provided to ministers to consider and deal with these representations. Mr Dutton's statement says these powers were the same under the former Labor government.
And what's the Labor position on this?
Yeah, so the opposition leader Bill Shorten, Joe, says that there's more questions that Peter Dutton should be answering about the two interventions now of these European au pairs. Labor's set up want Senate inquiry. They firstly want to put more pressure on Peter Dutton about this, but they also would like to seek a formal explanation from those departmental officials, because in the latest case we know that the official warned that granting a visitor visa would be of high risk. The French case that involved lobbying from AFL boss Gillan McLachlan, there are documents there that show a senior official warned there were details that Mr Dutton, there were details that didn't support Mr Dutton's intervention, even though he says he was applying common sense and he stands by that decision at the time. So Labor really now wanting to put some more pressure about this situation, saying there's definitely more questions that should be asked about this. But the government frontbencher Christopher Pyne has been speaking on Channel 9 about the issue this morning. Let's take a listen to that.
Peter Dutton looks at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of requests every year for people who'd like to get someone out of detention, and the rule that he runs over that is, are they likely to abscond? Now, a lot of people who stay in detention are the people who need to be removed from the country, and if he thinks that if he lets them free, they'll run off, then he doesn't let them out. But if they have a good case for being unlikely to abscond, then he lets them go free, and I think that's the right thing to do. Look, this phrase au pair, it sounds exotic, and so I think the media are fixated on it, but I really don't think there's anything to see here.